All right. Welcome. I am James Oliver Jr., co-founder of Kabila, and I'm super excited to be here with you today. We have a great conversation with a special guest. I apologize for the slightly delayed start here, but we are going to have an awesome conversation. While I'm introducing our guest, if you could pop in the chat, let us know where you're coming in from. And please share this on your social media channels to invite your friends to join the conversation. We're streaming live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, all the places. So, but today I'm super excited. Rocking my Techstars shirt because we have a special guest, Monica Wheat. Yes, managing director of Techstars Detroit Powered by JP Morgan. What is up, Monica?
Hi, how are you doing? Thank you for
Good,
having
good
me.
to see. Yeah, it's good to see you. I always feel like it's a mouthful to say Techstars Detroit Powered by JP Morgan.
Yes.
But you gotta say it, right? Gotta say it. We gotta say that. So thank you so much for being here, Monica. CW's coming in from Atlanta. That's what's up, Atlanta in the building. I'm actually based in Atlanta. So Kabila, for those who don't know, we are currently raising a $5 million investment fund to invest in founding teams with more than one gender, race, or ethnicity, because those teams give investors a 30% greater return. And we will invest in founders in our Kabila community. So, you want to hop into our community. If you need a co-founder, we have a co-founder matching app as well. You could learn more about that. Just visit joinkabila.com. So Monica's here today. Hello there, Kimberly. Monica is with us today to help you get your investability life together.
It's important.
Right?
Very important.
Yeah, because some folks stuff be raggedy, I'm guessing. Huh?
We don't say raggedy.
Oh, we don't say.
We say that they don't know yet.
That's true.
Yes, some folks just don't know yet.
Yeah, no, that's right. That's 100%. And this is why we do this. So if you want to get into this, Monica, what's your thoughts about how people could be more investable? And then if we have time, I'd love to get into a little bit more about your program, what it is, who you serve, and how people can submit a great application over there. Because I know, a lot of people in my Kabila community, and I have a foundation community called Parentpreneur Foundation, which is for Black parents or entrepreneurs, which was seeded with a grant from Brad Feld, Techstars co-founder Brad Feld. And we have a lot of founders in our community there and in my Kabila community who are interested in learning more about your program. So let's talk about it. How can founders become more investable, please?
Well, I think it's a couple different things. Out the gate, the first thing that people think, like, just to set the stage, the first thing that people think is like the whole point of this venture industry is to get money, to get funding. And I think at the baseline, the first thing that folks need to really understand is that funding is not the win. And it is this misnomer that is given to us by social media, by all the, quick storylines that you see of like, oh, this person raised X million, this person had an exit, this person became a unicorn. All those things are great, but the win is not the money itself. The win is that they had created a business that was investable. The win is that they created a business that was scalable, and that they had done these things to the tune that people were willing to invest in them. And so I think that's the first misnomer, is like to really, and it's hard for people to hear. And I say that all the time and people nod in their heads, but I can see them going, nah, I'm getting the bag. I'm getting the bag.
I'm actually really glad you said this, Monica, because I kind of shake my head a little bit when I see all these articles. So-and-so just raised such and such money. Okay. And like that, I mean, I've raised capital before. That's just the first step on the journey.
Yes.
Like you have to build a sustainable business so you could ultimately have a successful outcome if that's what you want. So I'm glad to hear you say that.
Yeah. And I think, and there's something, I mean, number one, we do need money to scale, especially when you get to a certain level. But I think, like, to back it up a little bit, I won't say raggedy, but what I'll say is that
I said it.
What I'll say is that we get a lot of applications where, unfortunately, the answers in the applications are like, well, I would have built this, but I didn't have any money. Well, okay, well, what did you do in place of having the money? And so I think one of the first steps in becoming like investable and making folks be excited about what you're building is your ability as a founder to surpass that. So I always tell folks that when I started off this journey many, many years ago, and I've done hackathons all over the country, I've ran all these accelerators, done all this stuff, and I've had fun with it. But some of the most memorable founders to me were folks who came in and they didn't have a CTO. They didn't have tech skills themselves, but they had a problem that they were passionate about, and they just studied until they figured out a way to solve it. And most people think that I'm going to say, oh, they taught themselves to code. No, they actually just used Excel. And they actually just used Excel to simulate what would happen over time. And they were the engine that that tested out the initial kind of idea and solution state. They were the one in the back end connecting the two databases and making matches or creating optimal pricing or any of those kind of things. They were the horse that was running their initial companies. And that's investable because you're finding founders who know how to bend around corners, and you're finding founders who know how to solve problems, and how when they hit a blockade, they found a solution, even though they didn't have a CTO or they didn't have full-on tech skills or all those things. So I think that's if the first step is understanding that the money is not the win, it's just a tool. Then the second step is definitely understanding that most investors are looking for, especially at the very early stages, you're looking to invest in founders who make you believe, you're investing in the founder, you're investing in their background, their passion, their tenacity,
Yeah.
investing in their knowledge of the particular area that they're trying to solve for. And so I think that's part of the thing is this is mindset. It's really a lot about mindset more than anything else. It's not about, oh, you raised, because I've seen plenty of companies who've raised 5 million, 1 million, 10 million, whatever. Didn't know what to do with it because they didn't have a plan. They just they were so focused. They learned all the tricks to quote unquote get the bag, and they were focused on getting it, and they got it, but then they weren't able to apply it to help them scale their companies. And then you saw a lot of companies falter with that, where they weren't even though they'd raised capital, they weren't able to be profitable. They weren't able to, consistently hire people or consistently pay people that they had already hired, just because their plans and their setup didn't allow for that. So I think those are the first two spaces. Is number one, understanding that funding does not equal success. It's just a tool. And then number two is that you're at the earliest stages, you're investing in founders. And so you should really be thoughtful about, like, why are you solving this problem, and be able to tell that story over and over again without any prompting, passionately, to create that FOMO that investors are looking for. Like, this is an opportunity. I know this unique thing that no one else knows about this market. And if I do those two things, then I'm interested in having a conversation. So those are your level setting starting point.
Okay. So that's interesting what you just said about being willing to tell that story over and over and over and over. I mean, this is not the point that you were making, but I think it's a good point, because I feel like as a founder, we kind of get tired of telling our story, right? I've heard this story a million times, but those other people over there that are listening, they never heard that story before. So you better tell it like you mean it and like you want them to do something for you if they can. Right?
Absolutely. I mean, and that's the thing. Like, I saw this, music producer once, and he was critiquing a performance, like an up and coming band, and basically everybody else in the band was, kind of sitting there waiting. Their faces showed it. They're waiting for the lead singer to sing their part so they could come sing their parts. And I remember he stopped everything and he was like, "Stop. You all need to be in it like you have never heard this before. You all have to be a part of this. Like, every note that she is singing is the most beautiful thing that you've ever heard. And the moment that you lose that newfoundness, the audience lost it too." And that's exactly what you've just mentioned. It's like, you've got to pull people into your story of what you're solving and what you're building. And if you don't do that, then you lose people almost immediately, because we hear hundreds of pitches, hundreds of pitches all over the world, digital pitches, people coming in your inbox, your DMs, people getting introduced through emails, through text, and all this stuff. People are always pitching. If you don't believe in it, why would we?
Right. So I had a thought about your first point about, the person willing to do the hacky things to get the thing from point A to point B without having the necessary resources. To me, that's someone who's gritty, right? They have grit, their persistence, 100%. Resilience. I think that is the baseline minimum if you want to be a founder. So just like for us, when we raise our fund, we're going to be looking to invest in founders who are comfortable with the hellacious brutality of being an early stage founder.
I like that, hellacious brutality. I love that, because that's so true.
I mean, right?
It's true. I'll tell you this too. I always, akin to my founders, I try to explain to them what it's going to be like when they're in a when they're in a room, when they're in a networking room, or when they're in this space or place where they're trying to raise capital. And I always tell them it's the Hunger Games. So I like hellacious brutality, but I always tell them the same thing. Like it's Hunger Games. You're
It's
trying to get
true.
people to be in your favor. Like you're
It's
trying to get
true.
people to talk well about you when you're not in the room, and to like advocate for you when you're on the playing field, right? And if you're not doing that well, then you're setting yourself up to a space and a place where you aren't where you're not getting the champions that you need in order to close a round or to scale a company.
It's true. So I have another question for you about your second comment. So Kimberly is on the call. So Kimberly's a good friend. Kimberly actually has a business called Just Her Rideshare.
Okay.
Just Her. Kimberly, what exactly is in the title? I don't want to mess it up. I know it's Just Her Rideshare. As rideshare, like Uber, but for women, by women, etc. You've heard of her? Kimberly,
yes.
Yeah. So Kimberly, when I think about grit, like, Kimberly comes to mind. Like extremely persistent, resilient, creative. Like she is that for me. And it's like you just said, you want somebody that's going to go on a live stream and say something like that about you to the managing director of Techstars Detroit. Right?
Yes.
So like, it's Just Her Rideshare. So Anika says hellacious brutality. I need to trademark.
I'm saying, like, I
might need to. I really might need to. It's true though.
Well
so to whatever extent you can answer this question, I might think it might be interesting to hear it from your perspective, because you're saying, investors are investing, or they're betting on the jockey, not the horse.
Correct.
Do you feel like that's always the case when you start looking at like underestimated founders? I don't like the term underrepresented, but underestimated founders. Is that the case also, or is it a little bit different for us, you think?
I think it's a little bit of both, because they're still betting on both, but they usually don't understand either. The majority of investors aren't underrepresented, and so they're coming into businesses and problems that they have no understanding of a lot of times. And so that's a lot. Like, a lot of investors have domain expertise in one space or another. So if you're solving a problem for a community or a segment of society that they don't have experience with, that's already foreign. But then on top of that, when you think about investing in the founders, I think it's even more so. I tell people a lot that still to this day, I'm invited to a lot of investment review committees for different funds. I'm invited to different screening committees for, accelerators and competitions and prizes. And I'm a judge all the time. And depending on who's in the room, especially if it's an underrepresented founder, you hear this comment more, especially if it's not an underrepresented founder, you hear this comment more often than not, where you'll hear somebody say, we're making that determination, who's the winner, who pitched it best, who did the job. And a lot of times they'll say something like, well, he reminds me of myself as a kid. Well, if that's if that's who you're looking to invest in, your former self from 20 years ago, and that's a subset that might not be in front of you if you're pitching to a group of underestimated founders. And so, and I've seen that before as well. And I've actually seen we've talked about this in past talks and past podcasts where prominent investors have come back and said themselves, they found themselves at home at night, reviewing the decks of underestimated founders over and over again, looking for something, and they just couldn't figure out what it was that they were looking for. And they had to stop themselves, and they came to the realization that they just it was the fact that it was an underestimated founder, and that they were looking for how they fit or didn't fit into the mold, and that their brain had, and again, that's why they call it unconscious bias. Their brain wasn't telling them that, you're this bad person. Their brain was just saying something's different here. Let's fix it. Like, let's find it. Let's solve it. They didn't know how to solve it. And then that small amount of doubt becomes bigger doubt. And then they're not an advocate. They're not a champion for them in the rooms where they need to be, where they need champions, where they need Hunger Games people to say, we're sending them tribute, and we're sending them, we're propping them up. In spaces where they don't have agency.
And they don't write the checks, right? So
yes. And then they don't.
Oh, it's so true, but it's so painful to listen to you talk about.
It's painful to watch. It's more painful to be outvoted when you're like, that doesn't make any sense, guys.
It's painful. So, one of the things that we did, we had the AWS startup team come. They had some research that was Harvard-backed research about how to identify biased questions from investors, and the importance of doing that, because if you don't, you actually end up raising a lot less capital. So they came into the workshop and we role played, and I was blown away at the amount of questions that we were getting that we didn't even know were biased questions. So if you can't even identify the fact the question's biased and figure out how to spin it,
Yep.
and put your spin on it
Yep.
so you can keep the conversation moving, you're at an incredible disadvantage in the context of what you were just talking about. And it makes me sad.
Yeah, AWS has come to, and they teach it every cycle that we've had with Techstars. We've had AWS come in and teach that same workshop for that same exact reason.
Yeah.
And I think it's akin, like, I think a lot of people don't realize it. And again, I think they don't realize it themselves that they're getting the biased questions. And a lot of folks don't realize that they're asking the biased questions. And that's the same thing for female entrepreneurs as well. Even when the investors are underrepresented, you'll see female entrepreneurs getting questions like, well, what happens when you have a child? Well, what happens when what happens when you get married? Or what, how will you manage this? And how will you, just stuff that they didn't ask any of the other candidates. And again, hurts to be outvoted when you're like, hey guys, we didn't ask the last two people that same question. So
No, we didn't.
Like, why are we asking this candidate this question?
Yeah.
And it's an awareness. So yeah, it is a process, and it is something that you want to be thoughtful about. And I think it's part of it again is like having more programs where people are allowed to integrate socially and and have real conversations with folks. That's when you're able to really get folks past kind of some of those initial uncomfortable moments, if you will.
Yeah. Do you have a hard stop at 12:30, by the way?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, cool. So that's two good thoughts about how to become investable. I'm keen to hear others if you have any more.
Absolutely. So another one I always say is that speak the language. And so like that's a huge one. So in Techstars, one of our core kind of texts that we share at the beginning of each Techstars session is venture deals. And venture deals written by Brad Feld and several other folks is not phenomenal book, but more so like for the sub tagline, which is to become smarter than your lawyer, to become smarter than all these other folks who know this space. But when I say when we talk about even underestimated founders, but just in general, the next step is that you want to be able to speak the language that everyone else is speaking. That makes you more investable. That makes you more likely that people feel like you will like, again, investing is a team sport. I know you guys have heard that before, but it really is. I can love you and see a lot of value in you, but if I can't convince 5 other people to do it and close your round, it doesn't really matter. The way that you do that is when they meet with you, that they feel comfortable that you can navigate and compete and be someone who can exist and be comfortable in environments where you may be the only person that looks like yourself. Even if you're not underestimated, just in general, being a startup founder, you need to know the language. And so we always recommend venture deals and a couple other, tomes and texts where they're free and it's open access and you can go online and get help and you can right now you can chat GPT everything you don't understand in venture deals. If something doesn't make sense to you, every single thing you can go in there and get it.
Chat GPT is the truth.
The truth. It will level your playing field.
Oh my God, it's so good. So good.
The last part I always say is that it's 3 ways. Like investment is, again, it's a team sport and it's pattern matching, right? And so the pattern matching aspect of it is usually they're looking for the pattern that an investor is looking for the pattern where they've seen the most money made or where they made their last money.
Right.
And so a lot of times that pattern is a very specific type of folks from 2 or 3 schools that are male, that are not underestimated. And those are the folks that they've made money with before. And so there's 3 ways that you can become investable. So either you change the pattern. So you actually go in and you prove to them, which is a very long route, but it can be done because I've seen it done, where you prove to them that even though you don't match the pattern, you have the ability to do it. It's a harder road because, as we all know, underrepresented founders traditionally just don't get as much capital as the rest of the market. The second is that you change the investor. And so that's where programs that are geared towards or focused on finding this talent in underrepresented spaces, like the JP Morgan Advancing Cities programs, like programs like Backstage Capital, like programs like a lot of the different ones that I've been involved with and several of my colleagues have been involved with over the years that are focused on finding this talent in spaces and places where folks don't traditionally expect it to be. That's how you can win. And then the third is that you actually jump in and with that pattern, you actually change the type of investment. And so something else is so there's traditional venture capital, but there are other ways that you can get funding and finance that can help you grow your business that aren't traditional venture capital. And so with that, there are ways, especially if you have a pretty good business where you have invoices coming in on the regular, or you have
Mm-hmm,
revenue coming
mm-hmm,
in on the regular, or
mm-hmm.
anything like that. There are types of funding that are revenue-based funding and invoice-based funding and grant funding, which is non-dilutive, that are ways to skip bridges and to get bridges so that you can get the capital to scale. Once you're able to do that, and usually what I tell a lot of my founders is, if they can do some alternative financing, whether it's non-dilutive or some of these other things, and be successful, it's usually easier to get people on board after that, underrepresented or not. But it's that much more work when at the early stage, there
Yeah.
are investors that are focused on early stage funding. It's just more difficult to get cash out of them.
Yeah, so that's a similar point. That's a good point. A similar one. So Trey Baker, from Techstars Tulsa, he was in Atlanta. I think it was last month. He came to where we do Tech Tuesdays Founder Happy
Yep.
Hour in Atlanta. Have you seen that?
Yep.
Yeah. So they're going
Yep.
great. So Trey was in the room and he came up on stage and he was making that exact same point to founders. Think about some other ways, creative ways to get to the bag so you can keep it moving.
Yep.
So we got some comments here. I want to James DeReal, appreciate that. Appreciate that. Always bringing us the resources. I try. Let's see here. So Anika says, she said, oh, definitely the key QBL community has a resource. Well, we have some resources. We're doing our best. Appreciate that. So what's this? Then they got freaking young kids and try to get around lunch and soon. Yeah, connect with us. Oh, that was like basically a commercial. Yeah, okay. Sorry, I read that first. Sorry about that. Sorry. So look, y'all. The reason we do these is because I always say, first of all, in the comments, just let us know where you're coming in from, please, and then just share this out on social media, on your channels. We do these events because you heard what Monica said. What's your email inbox look like, Monica? A dumpster fire, I'm guessing, right?
I was like, crazy.
A dumpster fire. Your LinkedIn DMs are probably a dumpster fire.
Yes, but LinkedIn is better.
LinkedIn is better. I was impressed that we've been able to. I feel like it's easier to communicate with you on LinkedIn DMs than it is email.
Yes.
But you respond to email too. But that's a dumpster fire. I know. And I tell founders all the time. So we went through Techstars Austin. We got in the second time we applied.
Yep.
And we built a relationship with the MD and mostly the MD.
Yep.
But you have founders, like, you have got to help people like Monica connect the dots. Investors invest in lines, not dots. You got to help them make lines. So you show up to an event like this, right? Presumably Monica has office hours,
yes,
or she's on social media. You engage, you comment. Can I add you to my investor update? You help her connect the dots. So if you don't get in the first time, we had a young lady. Oh boy, the name is escaping me, but she's in Techstars Tulsa right now. I can't believe the name escaped me. I'm getting old. I have young kids. My brain's not so good anymore. But she applied 7 times.
Wow. Yes. I mean, it's very common to apply multiple times. And again, I always tell my founders and our applicants is that it may not be like, we might love everything that you're doing, and it just might not be the right market timing. We had a lot of problem with that in the midst of this past 2-year downturn. We saw that people really just weren't, even already it was slow, and we saw that people really weren't investing in ed tech and some of the gov tech and things like that as much. Mm-hmm. So we're very thoughtful about, like, can we help them if they come in the program? We love them, but we just want to make sure that we can help them, and it won't be disappointing for them to be in the program and maybe have an even harder time than some other folks. But we also seen other folks do phenomenal with it. But yeah, it is. Many of my founders in my current classes have applied multiple times before they got in, and they were better for it. Every time they were better, they were refining, they were pivoting, they were changing, and that helped them be that much more competitive.
Yeah, so Scania, that's who it was. Scania, thank you so much for that. So Scania, 7 times she applied, and she ended up getting into Tulsa. And that last time, she wasn't even applying to Tulsa. Like, Trey reached out to her, huh?
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's awesome. Was he?
Yeah, because Trey told her initially. He said, Trey told her, "When I'm ready for you, I will send for you." Basically,
Sometimes it works that way.
Yeah, man. So thank you, Kimberly, for the kind words. I appreciate it. Oh wow, Kimberly said she applied 5 times to Techstars.
Oh wow.
Right.
Yeah, it happens. I mean, we do have multiple cities. We have over 50 programs in cities running worldwide, and then some
Yeah.
people apply to the same city each time. Some people apply to different cities each time, and then sometimes just the timing is right and the opportunity is right, and the class mix is right, and then other times
Yeah.
the setup is different.
Yeah, totally. So in the next like 5 minutes or so, I want to just talk a little bit about your program. Um, can you tell everybody what types of founders should apply to your program?
Absolutely. So the JP Morgan Advancing Cities program is a 9 city initiative that can invest in founders from any background, but we are targeting founders that come from these underestimated backgrounds who traditionally, historically, have not had the levers, the access, and the resources that other founders have had. And so there are 9 cities. Detroit is one of them. We have New Orleans, we have Los Angeles, New York, Atlanta, Chicago, Miami. I know I'm missing one somewhere. Oakland, and so Detroit in particular, we are industry agnostic, and so with that, that's a lot of my background. I've been working for about 25 years. First 15 or so in corporate, and then since then in a variety of roles. But we're industry agnostic, but we tend to see applications in a couple of core areas. AI for sure, fintech, enterprise SaaS, mobility, electric vehicles for sure. We tend to see a lot more hardware and hardware software mixes, hybrid
Oh, that's
mixes.
interesting. How do you feel about that? Because
I
there's a
love
reason
it.
they call it hardware, right?
Yeah,
Because
hardware is hard, man.
it's
But
hard.
I'm from the Renaissance city. I'm from the Motor City. We know what to do with it. So, um,
Lord have mercy.
yeah, we have fun, but yeah, and we tend to see applications concentrated there, but we're industry agnostic as a whole. And the founders that make it into our program are those who have grit. Just exactly what I was explaining up front. Like we've made this a science almost, and we really do focus on a strategic mix of founders, some of which who've never raised a dime, and some of which who've never earned a dime, and then some of which who've raised $1 million, or some of which who've earned $1 million or more. We purposely strategically mix them to be a very robust group so that they're able to build and feed off of each other while they are accelerating together for 13 weeks.
So
But yeah,
good.
we're coming up this fall for our
Okay.
applications. May 22nd is the next deadline. So fall 2024 is when we next launch. We're all in the midst of our spring 2024 class right now, but
Awesome.
we'd love to invite people to apply.
Yeah, awesome. So Kimberly said she just got an invitation to the mobility one. So
Mhm.
Kimberly, I don't know if you saw, but I did one of these conversations with the mobility folks a while ago. So if you want to go and it could be able to look on the event replays, you can see that conversation. It might be helpful for you. So somebody said, "Are you planning anything in Denver for the mobility vertical?"
So you're
What do you
talking about
mean?
economic mobility? Because there's an
Yeah, I'm not
economic
sure what that
mobility
means.
in New York.
I'm not sure what that question means.
Yeah, sorry,
Um,
Raphael. I'm not
it's
sure
all
which one
good.
you.
Yeah, so she's applying to the same
Yeah,
event as
yeah,
you.
that's what I was like. That's
Absolutely.
the one in New York. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Perfect. So no, I appreciate that. So I do have another couple quick questions. How many
Sure.
startups do you accept in a class?
12. We do 12 per
12. You did say
cycle.
that. No, industry agnostic. Um, and so let's talk about real quick. How can people submit a great application?
I like it. I would say be thorough. Understand that it's a competitive process, as you all know. Like, especially for people who've applied multiple times, it's a competitive process. And if we see that it says submit a video of you introducing yourself and your team, even though it says optional, if you don't submit the video, everybody else did. You're not as competitive.
You're the second MD I heard say that.
It says optional, but like it's just and I'm not being what's the word? I'm not trying to be rude to anyone, but common sense isn't common. Like if there's an opportunity to differentiate yourself, differentiate yourself.
Do it.
Do it.
Do
um,
it.
or it's like, and it's like, and like I said, and it's particularly for Detroit. Every city is different, but Detroit, we've invested in founders who have had zero revenue and zero dollars earned or raised before. But we don't know if it's zero or if it's $1,000 if you put nothing in the field that says how much have you raised. And so it's basic stuff like that's a baseline. So out the gate, when we're going through all the applications we get, we're looking for people who did the assignment, as they say, who understood the assignment and showed up and
Right.
did everything. So that's level one. Now, level 2 is it's important to know, like, I had this conversation with several folks, is this is a full-time program. Techstars is an intense program, and James, you can attest to this. It is
It's
an
like
intense
drinking from
program.
the fire hose, man.
It is drinking from the fire hose. So we have a lot of people who will tell us that they have full-time jobs and apply, and probably tell us all about their full-time job and how they're going to, and that does not work. This is for people who are full-time founders who are looking to go all in on their business. You can have consulting and side things as long as you manage that schedule, and it's something that is not germane to, like, we're telling you we have a meeting with an investor and you're like, I got to go to work. That does not work. And so it's like those kind of things are the basics out the gate before we're thinking through. But then when we dig into like the actual content of like the answers, then it's really being thoughtful about, do you know who your customer is? Do you know the problem that you're trying to solve? Why do you think that your solution is something that they will do? And then show traction. Traction doesn't necessarily need to be revenue. It definitely doesn't need to be, money raised, but traction can be, I interviewed 500 customers that are exactly like the customer that I want. And 80% of them said, not only would they use my solution, they'd pay me $1, and 25 of them are on my wait list.
Right. Boom. That's something, right?
Right. Like, there you go. Like, now we're having a conversation versus
that's something.
This is what I think, what I hope, what I'm praying for, that kind of thing. Like, we're looking for tangible traction that you can sink into and assess.
Yes.
But yeah, those are kind of the content after that is the key. So after those first baseline things of basic communication, completeness, it's like any other job application or interview opportunity. You show up, and you do, you put a polished application together. And then you dig into the content, and the content is really like, do you understand this market? Do you understand who this customer is? And when we think about being investable, the last part I'll definitely share with is, investors are looking for, not only can they, if I put 120,000 into your company, ideally I'd want to get that 120,000 back plus a profit.
Yeah.
And that profit only comes if you're able to scale the company. So if your plan doesn't involve like how you can do something that's repeatable and scalable as part of your solution, then you're putting yourself at a disadvantage, because now we don't know how we'll ever get the investment back or we'll ever be profitable.
Yeah.
And so that's where the venture scale aspect comes into, which venture scale is like, they're looking for 5 or 10x somewhere in there. Usually on the higher end. Like, what does that look like? And what, at least you don't have to have the plan. You may not know everything, but can you extrapolate what that could look like in the future and how you would scale this company so that everyone involved has a chance to put in all these investment rounds and get returns from them?
100%. So everybody, you see that's Monica's LinkedIn profile scrolling across the bottom of the screen. If it were just me, I'm just saying, I would go to LinkedIn. If you're interested in her program, that is, right?
Yeah.
Go there, add a note to the connection request.
Yes.
You like the
I tell people that all the time. Say how we met. Say where you learned how we met. Because I get a lot of sales. We get a lot of sales.
And you probably don't accept the ones without a note, I'm guessing. If you're anything like me, I don't.
Every time when I try to give people the benefit of doubt, the next message I get is
some spammy thing,
who's
right?
Who's your resource for leads, Monica? Don't you want to
hire? I want to learn more about you. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, just google.com, bro. Like, knock it off. So just simply add a note. Tell her that you met her on this conversation, this Kabila conversation with me, and talking about how to become investable. And she said one thing or whatever that resonated with you, and thank her for her time and ask her to please connect with you on LinkedIn. Boom, you're done. So now when you see her stuff, right?
It's a dot. And then
it's a dot, line. So do you give your email out on these things or no?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's monica.wheat@techstars.com. Yeah. You guys were prepared.
I am doing all the things over here, ham and egg and everything. Yeah, so that's right. So here's an interesting comment that was made here by Margaret. Does Techstars have a community of African-American angel investors that we can tap into once we join the program? They found success with finding funding from angels in the community, and we are looking to broaden our network specifically with African-American investors. Well, that's interesting. Why are you focusing only on African-American investors? I'm interested in taking money from any angel investor. I don't care what they look like. But I mean, it's a fair question. So
it's a fair question. We don't have, to my knowledge, we don't have a specific group for African-American angel investors, but I know several of the all of our databases. We have like I think one count is 4,000, another count is like 10,000 different investors in our database, and they can all be filtered by some of them can be filtered by the thesis and the way that they invest. Some of them can be filtered by like the different areas. I don't think that their own background is part of that filtering. I do not believe that is part of the process, but we do have those filters. And then I know each MD, including myself, we all have our own private Rolodexes of investors and folks that we invite when we have demo days and expos and when we're looking to create deal flow for our founders.
Perfect. So I will add to that. I have found some success reaching out to angels who are or were founders.
Yes.
Because those folks tend to move with three things: speed, conviction, and like empathy, right? They get it. And if they like you and like one little hacky thing I did that worked is everybody's situation is different, but I was working on my pitch deck and it was an angel I wanted to connect with, and I invited him, hey, can you help me frame some aspect of my pitch deck? Right. So now we're going back and forth in the pitch deck. He quickly got to see that I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do. So I was building trust with him. And then he saw that I took feedback really well, because not everybody takes feedback well, which can be a turnoff.
They do not.
I can imagine what some of those messages are you get when people get rejected from the program. So,
yeah, we talk about this all the time.
Yeah, so that was an example of like the deck wasn't even done. He was like, I don't have much, but can I put in $5,000? And he's a great investor. He's an LP, I think, in one of the Techstars Rising Stars fund.
Mm-hmm.
Great investor, very connected. That was great. So that's just like a little hacky thing, and we got to be looking for ways to be creative to get some of these bags, right? So
absolutely.
Yeah, you're so welcome, Margaret. So I'm going to wrap here. We're 10 minutes over, but huh?
I said sorry.
No, it's all good. So if connect with Monica on LinkedIn, email her. But if you send an email, don't send a novel. Probably don't even want to send your pitch deck. Just say, hey, I'm doing this. Make it a couple sentences. I met you here. Is it okay if I send my deck or whatever, right? Or whatever your ask is, but just be good.
Oh, sorry. I would say I am the same as most investors, and I don't click on links that I didn't ask for. So just letting you all know that.
Yo, this is the real right here, right? Monica's email is a dumpster fire. She's very gracious. It's very gracious of her to come and spend this time with us. And Monica, like I will tell you, like I'm here for you as a resource. When you have events coming up, you have applications open, you want to try to get the word out, like we could spin one of these up anytime you want. Anastasia, you know Anastasia, right?
Yep.
So she's in my community. She did a pitch practice inside of our community privately to help founders improve their pitch, which is practice. And she actually found a couple of people who are like in advanced talks to get into her program. So if you have somebody in your team, your investment principal or investment associate wants to come in and do that, and we could, help you find some good founders in a more intimate space, let me know about that. But, we appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming. And y'all, like,
thank you for having me.
Tap into our community, y'all. Like, we're raising a fund. Like, we have our first 1 or 2 LPs committed. My LP deck's not even done yet. I had to put that thing down. It was messing with my mental health. But we go raise this. It was. That's a whole other conversation, girl.
It takes a lot. It does.
I'm at a point in life where if it's not good for my mental health, I will put it down.
Sometimes you have to do that, and this is as I said, this is the Hunger Games on this side of the world. So over here, it's an accepted practice, I would say.
Yes, 100%. So thank you so much, Monica. If you could hang for 1 second after I shut this down, I'm just going to run the outro. Thank you, everybody, for coming and joining us. You're so welcome, Margaret. Thank you for being with us. Thank you, Kimberly. Thank you, CW, Raphael, everybody else in the comments. We appreciate y'all. I'm going to roll this outro, and we're going to roll out. Stand by. If I can find it. I got to find it. I'm doing all the things, right? Where's the doggone video? Oh, there we go. All right. See you later. Hang on.